So if you just watched the last video that I did, that was the how can we work with you? Because 6 or 7 people had asked, how can we work with you? The other heavily asked question was, how did you get into the work you do today? A lot of people wanted to know what my spiritual awakening was. And so this is probably going to be longer than the last video, but if you're looking to see what my offerings are and hear me speak about my offerings, that's the last video. This is kind of going to talk about me. You know, how did I get into the work I did today, or I do today? It's going to be about my journey. So I'm going to try to make it as quick as I can, condense everything down, but also explain. So when I was 15, that was really when I got into all of this because there was a death in my family and I had never experienced death before. It gave me a lot of anxiety, depression, anger, mania, and I had never experienced that before. So and I had already talked with whatever you want to call them, ancestors, dead people. Prior to this, I always had a connection with my uncle, who was already passed on when I was born. But at this point, that's when I started going to therapy. So I went to therapy, and one of the other questions I got, but I'll probably put this on my story, is who my biggest inspiration is. And I will always say my biggest inspiration on my journey is my therapist. So when I was 15, my therapist said, Dan, I really think you should go to yoga. At least just give it a shot, try it out. I really think this is going to be something that's going to be good for you. And so I would say that how did I get into the work I do today is because of April's love. Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to say her name. Oh, well, she's my therapist. I'm not saying her last name. Actually, April might see this. Her love, her guidance, her acceptance, her connection to her own spirituality. But anyway, so at that time I was already smoking weed. I wouldn't say I liked smoking salvia and doing mushrooms in high school, but I did them. I really liked smoking and talking to the trees, or smoking and sitting and doing yoga in the woods and talking to the trees. That was a big one. But that was when I read some really interesting books. You know, I read The Four Agreements. I read Yoga. This was one of April's books she had lent me. Yoga and Psychotherapy. She also gave me the Tao of Pooh. You know, and there's a lot of other, you know, Ram Dass, Be Here Now, those, like, we know those books. That was what I had started reading. And of course there were like some other ones as well. Like even this, like Invisible Landscape, is a really interesting read into the idea and world of psychedelics. But like I said, at that time, it was more that I loved going to my local YMCA to practice yoga, because I thought it was so cool that these older beings, and at that time I'm like, oh, these are old people. I'm taking yoga with old people. And then I will never forget my first class. These motherfuckers were just upside down on their head for mad long. And I was like, what? I was like, I'm the young one. I should be able to do that, not them. And I realized they were more full of life at their later years than my friends and I were at our younger years. So they really inspired me to deep dive into yoga philosophy. And that was huge. And in high school, not many people spoke about that. Not many people even spoke about yoga, you know? It was more or less like, my friends were kind of like, you did yoga last week, you're balanced, you're good, you know? But I had mental health issues, and I had mental health issues. So moving along further from that, because I got really into the law of attraction and the emotional body and overall well-being, that my physical body was connected with my emotional body. And also I had a lot of existential crisis in high school. Like could not believe that I was a human and that I'm alive. But that also might relate to, you know, the 15-year-old doing mushrooms or, you know, salvia. Hello. So I then went to college, and at that point I definitely abused alcohol and cocaine. 100%. It was a way for me to escape, but a way for me to also fit in. It was a way for me to escape my mental illness, but also fit in, because my friends weren't people that were like, yes, let's talk about your emotional body. You know, they were, you know, at at that time, they were just your average kid who was like, yo, we're in college. We can literally go out and be drunk. So let's do it. You know, and with that, I convinced myself that because I walked around with my yoga mat, or like I had my yoga mat out, like, I was healing. Which is so funny to think about, you know, like props. I had this conversation with someone recently, like props can really do that to you. Like, again, just because you're wearing something or you have books or certain things on your altar does not make you spiritual. It does not make you healing or doing the work. So that's actually when I really got into kirtan. Yoga. So that really deepened my practice with the understanding of sound. I went to school for music. I dropped out of college like twice or 3 times. I actually just recently checked to see how many credits I had. I thought I went to school way more than I did. Hello. But college just wasn't it for me. I left that first time, not because I wanted to, but because of multiple surgeries on my throat. And yeah, they told me that I could not sing and that I should not sing. Like, my voice wasn't good enough to, like, compete in the world of college, vocalists. So I left. And within that, I got really deep into breath work. So breath work, kirtan, mantra, a lot of stuff that had to do with music, but I would go to kirtans and I wouldn't sing at that time. Because it was ingrained in my head that my professors had told me, and I'm not going to say his name, but I had this one professor, he was great at what he did, but he was really sassy and pulled me off of the stage one time, and afterwards just had that conversation of like, I don't know really what you think is going to come of this, but you don't have what it takes anymore. Because of my voice change. And so, you know, that was a conversation that we had before my voice really changed even. So I think that was also hurtful because it really hadn't fully changed at that point. I had multiple procedures done. So anyway, I then at that point left college early on. Obviously, like I said, don't have a degree. And I at that point also needed to really step away from that like party aspect. I could not drink or do any type of drugs. Like, I know some people are like, I'm sober, but I smoke. Like, no, I couldn't do any of that, and decided to go on antidepressants. And so I'm a huge supporter of do what you need to do for you. I went to all the sound healings. I was doing yoga. I did the meditations, you know, I was doing all of those things. And it was like, but the holistic healing can really help you. I needed medication. I wasn't at that place to actually connect with the practices. I was going to these things, but I wasn't getting out of it what I needed at that time. I hope that makes sense. So basically, when I went on the antidepressants, I stopped using any type of substance, which was really weird for me because I started smoking when I was like 14, started smoking weed when I was like 14. So at that point, I was like, what do people do? I think I like smoked cigarettes for a few months because I was like, what do sober people do? Then I met someone and I dated this person who, it kind of shifted me back into that like 15-year-old, like, let me smoke and take my book into the woods, talk to the trees, and then do yoga. And the reason why I say that is because that person was completely sober, had friends that were also completely sober. My friends were not like that. Not that my friends were bad people. We just weren't like that. And this person also really loved the earth. Like, really loved the earth. Has a lot of, still does, really loves the earth. And that was difficult for me to move through. I think in that relationship, I didn't really you know, it was a voyage back to myself. So I don't know if they even got to fully see what I was. Like, I didn't pick up my instruments. I still wasn't singing, you know, loved music always, but music was also somewhat of a trigger for me. Buzzword, right? Trigger. Music was also kind of difficult for me because I wanted to sing more. I wanted to express more, but I still had that in the back of my mind, like, ooh, you shouldn't. So as the years went on, I started working with the special needs population, children and adults. And I believe at this point, I already had my YTT. I had practiced for so long that getting my YTT, I think the biggest part for me that was difficult was just like, wow, this is a lot of like science, you know, like learning about the body. Because for me, the regiment of study of philosophy and the regiment of study for meditation and movement was like a part of my emotional body at that point. So that was kind of the first thing. Then I started working with energy because, I mean, I had already been getting energy work done on me for years, but also remember I was like using and abusing alcohol and cocaine. So I would go get Reiki done because I was like, ooh, I don't feel good. I would get Reiki done, then I'd feel great. And then I would, you know, go rip a few lines, you know, have fucking 4 shots of espresso like an animal, like an absolute animal. And then I would drink like 6 beers and a whole bottle of Jameson, which made no sense. I mean, at the time it made so much sense. That was the plan. Now when I think about it, like what was, you know, it was escapism. And so the Reiki wasn't doing anything. The energy healing wasn't doing anything. The sound healing wasn't doing anything. The crystals weren't doing anything. So now all that time later, after I start working with the special needs population, I really start to move into, oh shit, that's right. This stuff did help me before I kind of lost it. And when I left my job, I don't think I was a Reiki master yet. But I already had my 2 levels of energy healing under my belt. And did I? No. I think I had my breathwork certification at that point, not my master's. And so it just really made me realize when I had a student who looked at me and said, oh, so are you teaching yoga today? And I was like, we already did yoga. And she was like, no, like outside of here, like you teach when you go home, right? And I was like, oh, you know, sometimes I'm just too tired, so I don't always teach classes. You know, I try to do it once a week. And, you know, she was kind of the angel that had to deliver the message of, you're really good at that. You should do that full time. And I literally was like, oh my God, she's fucking right. I should do this shit full time. So I don't know. We can either say, to answer the question that was, how did you get into the work that you do today? We can either say it was my therapist when I was 15 for starting this all off, or we can either say it was that student who was like, you're a fucking shem for not teaching outside of the school building, Ms. Dan. And so then, yeah, you know, COVID hit, and the summer of 2020, that's how I started doing my 3-hour classes. Because I wanted to go deeper into so much more. You know, there was so much more for us to learn about. You know, I was used to going to yoga classes that were like an hour long. And when I started teaching my yoga classes, they were always like an hour and 15 or an hour and 20, because I'm like, yo, meditation is the most important part for me. So I would keep everyone in a deep meditation, you know? And so summer of 2020, that really started to propel those 2 to 3 hour classes, which is why I have my 2 to 3 hour classes now monthly over Zoom, which has been really great because we do get to have people from all over. It doesn't matter if you're in a completely different time zone from us, you can still join us. And so then, yeah, then that just started it all. I had left, I worked for the Department of Education. I left the Department of Education, and a lot of people criticized me for that because, you know, to them it was stupid. But to further along this message, because I really want to touch on why the Peru retreat and the one-to-ones are the way they are. Well, the one-to-ones are the way they are because, like I said, I would go get a one-off session, and I wouldn't integrate with any of it. I wouldn't do anything with it. I would just be like, yes, I fucking feel great. And I've definitely had clients like that. Like, yes, I fucking feel great. And I understand that. Sometimes you just like need a sesh. But 9 times out of 10, what we're really looking for is accountability and support through what comes up in the sessions. So that's why I work with people for 3 to 6 months at a time so that we can really move through what you're looking to move through. It's not in any way, shape, or form meant to be like trapping you, but when you're ready to do that work for 3 to 6 months, you're ready to do that work for 3 to 6 months. When it calls to you, it calls to you, you know? And I had a session this morning that was absolutely beautiful, and we've done everything, almost everything I have to offer, that person and I have done. And there's so much more laying ahead that she's still comfortable to be with me for. So that's beautiful. So now moving into the reason why the Peru retreat is the way it is. So I worked in an ayahuasca church last year for about 6 months. And by month 4, I was trying to figure out how to get the fuck out of there. Spirituality has really became this. Okay. That's a different conversation. Plant medicine is heavily used in the United States now. Years ago, it started to become popular, and now it is just super popular, you know? And like, don't get me wrong, like, I did a training on how to serve cacao, which is why I serve cacao. So like, I get it. And I have done a lot of plant medicine in the US. However, what I really want to specifically touch upon is none of that money went back to the land or the indigenous peoples that we were using their medicine and their ancestors' guidance and teachings and all of that stuff. We were using it at the church that I was working at, but the medicine didn't go back there. The money didn't go back there. Well, the medicine didn't either, hello. But like the money didn't go back there. And it was unethical, it lacked integrity, and there was no, for me, it was the opposite of my morals. So the reason why the Peru retreat is so heavily based around, we're not renting a space that's not Peruvian owned. We are staying at a Peruvian hostel or hotel, you know, depending on the context you want to look at it in. The food is being catered by the locals. Our friend who lives there, who is Peruvian, who has never left, who is an absolute angel, is like the other person, you know what I mean? Like, he is, you know, co-hosting this with us. And of course we have a medicine woman from Peru coming in. Not to say that there aren't places in the US that you can't find somebody who trained, you know, in whatever country. But for me, it was just super important when I realized we use a lot, as Westerners, we use a lot. I can speak for myself. Let me not say we. I use a lot of teachings from a lot of places that are not New York fucking city. That's just the reality of it. That's not where these teachings come from. And I've always done my best to try to find, you know, yoga homes or like monasteries that I could, you know, you go on their website and they have like, you know, some of them have a donation button, you know, that you can just donate to right away. Other places, it's like emailing them and they're never going to get back to you. They don't check their emails, but you know, trying to find places where you can pour money back into the communities that you learn from. And working at that ayahuasca church really opened my eyes to recognizing how much we don't do that. Or at least I was at a place that did not do that. I cannot speak for all of the United States. Shit's big as fuck. But I can speak on behalf of what I saw and what I was a part of. So the Peru retreat is heavily based on working in collaboration with the locals in the valley. Because it's important to me and my journey. So how I got to do the work I do today is because there are people and places that have put this work out, and somehow it's made its way all the way to me. And I'm absolutely fucking blessed that somehow, some way, it did. And I don't know what the next step of my journey looks like, but obviously this was too long to put on my story. I appreciate, this question from like 6 of you, or like 5, I don't even know. There was quite a few, like a handful, a little bit of a handful. I appreciate this question. Of course, I could have went on longer, but I wanted to keep it as short and to the point to let you know this was the way it was. So the last 10 years of my life have added up to this very moment in time. And if you want to see, or you just want to know quickly, the offerings a little bit more in depth, that last video that was uploaded, that is kind of just me talking about the tiers, if you want to call them, or ways that you can work with me. It's also important for me to make them as accessible to people as possible. Not everyone has the monetary or time means, and I'm always working to improve how I can better serve my community, because when I better serve myself, I better serve my community. When I better serve my community, I better serve myself. So thank you so much to the people who asked questions, and there still are a few more questions, and I know I have to answer them, and I will in due time. Thank you guys so much. If you listen to all of this, you're fucking cool as shit. Thank you so much.